Hi, this is Jerron Smith for Noble Desktop, and today we're going to be making a little equalizer animation in Adobe After Effects. So I'm just going to use this graphic I made in Illustrator as a reference. It's going to drag it to the new comp button. And it's just a reference, so I'm basically going to lower its opacity, T for opacity. I'll knock it down to about 50 or so. Then I'm just going to lock the layer so I don't move it around. Really, I just want to get an idea of where these little boxes should be. So I'm going to make one box as one layer, and then I'm just going to basically duplicate it out to get all the bars. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So period on the keyboard is zoom in Adobe After Effects. I'll use the rectangle tool. I'm just going to turn off the fill. So Option or Alt, click on the color box. We'll just toggle through the choices, and that's none. That was a mistake. Sorry, I actually want to leave no stroke, but I want to actually have a solid fill, so I'll do it one more time. And I'm going to use a light blue, I think is nice for this. I'm just going to draw a little box here. I'm going to rename that bar 1. You can rename a layer by clicking on it, pressing return or enter on your keyboard, and just typing something else. You can also right-click on a layer to do that. I'll open the contents of that bar 1 shape layer. I'm going to look for the rectangle path. And I'm just going to round that off a little bit. So I'm going to unlock the width and height. Now let's make it 25 pixels wide. I think I'll make it, let's say, about 5 pixels tall. Okay. And I'm just going to reposition the bar. So I'm going to grab that bar with my move tool, selection tool, to drag it up a little bit to the bottom. That's good. I like that. That's pretty good. I'm going to rename the, no, I'll leave the name rectangle 1 intact. It's fine. So I'm going to highlight the layer. So I'm going to add to the entire layer a repeater. What the repeater does is it basically repeats the shape on the layer if you apply it to the entire layer. But you can also apply it to the individual shape on the layer, just repeat that one shape. Pretty cool because you can actually combine repeaters together, some on shapes, some on the entire layer, to get some really interesting effects. And by default, the repeater is simply making 3 copies, and it's 100 pixels off to the side each time. I'm just going to open the repeater to get to its properties. I'm going to change the number of copies to 10. I can't see them because they're literally running off the composition. And I'm going to change the transform repeater from 100 pixels horizontally to 0 horizontally, and I'm just going to do maybe like 5 or 6 vertically. And I want it to be actually negative 5 or 6 vertically. So they go up a little more, I think would be good. So maybe like -7 or so. That's good. I want a space between them. So you can also adjust the scale, rotation, other properties of the repeater. It's actually pretty fun to have it, but I just wanted these. Now what I want to do is basically have an animation where the number of copies varies. So I'm going to use an expression for that. And there's 2 expressions I could use in this case, probably wiggle and random. I'm just going to use random. So I'm going to hold down Option, click on the number of copies. That gives me the expression. And you can very quickly tell an expression is on a property because the numerical value turns red very quick. So I'm going to replace this default text with random. And I want it to randomize between, let's say, I got 10 right now, so let's say between 7 and 12. 7, comma 12. Put it into my line, tap semicolon, I'm just going to leave the text field outside of it, or I'm tapping return on my keyboard. So what happens now is it does that. It's really fast. Really, really fast. Because it runs at the frame rate of the composition. And I could adjust that, but what I want to do is actually adjust the frame rate of the expression. So I'm going to use another expression here. Posterize time, I'm set it to about 4. And use that frame rate with the in, semicolon again. Now I've got a much slower animation happening. So we have the 1 animated bar. Now we need a bunch more. I'm just going to hide all these properties. And I'm going to duplicate that bar a bunch of times. Just Command D or Control D is the keyboard shortcut for that. I'm just going to drag it over a little bit each time. I'm not even being very particularly careful if they line up. I'll use a line a little bit later to make that nice and neat. And notice that the way random works, it's interesting because it's not the same value each time. Every time I'm duplicating, I'm getting another number, another value, so it does vary a little bit. That's about evenly spaced. I'm going to grab all 6 of those bars. Let's open a line, window, align. I'm just going to align this to the composition and make it flush to the bottom. And then I'm going to just distribute it a little bit to spread them out. And that's that. I'll turn off the original template layer, and now I have this. Highlight one of the layers, EE twice will reveal the expressions. And I can always go back in if I want to and just play around with the maybe posterize time a little bit. Maybe do a little more variation on this. Maybe this will be 5 and 15. So I don't have to use the same values over and over again. I can basically just play with them a bunch. Like that. See, kind of cool. Okay, I'll adjust a couple of these and just make them a little different. So EE, kind of make the text be a little bigger so I can see it. I'll use the actual same numbers, but I'll keep the post-rise time lower, so maybe 5. This one. So just a little more randomness into the random animation. That way I can have a little fun with that. Yeah, to select all my layers, Control tilde or Command tilde. That was not Command tilde, that was just tilde, by the way, which makes the panel full screen size. Control tilde or Command tilde on Mac will show and then hide all properties. And that's pretty good if you want basically each bar to have a single color. But what if you actually wanted to have the bars vary like a real equalizer would? Well, that's going to take a little more work. So I'm going to make one more layer. I'm going to make a rectangle layer. And this one, I'm actually going to use a gradient. So I'm going to hold on Option, click on Gradient, get a linear gradient here. You can click on the color box itself to be able to change the gradient. I think I'm going to go with a purple, dark purple maybe. Do a kind of bright red, I think. Okay, I'm just going to double click to make a rectangle the full size of the composition. And because my selection tool is active, I actually have the gradient slider visible. So I'm just going to basically drag that right up to be purple on the bottom and red on top. I can always edit at the same point in time. So the gradient slider is visible because the selection tool is active, but you can edit at any point in time, either from the contents or from the toolbar on top. I'm just going to rename that, call this one gradient. I know it's not very imaginative, but it will definitely work. And I'm going to drag it below all the bars. So what I want to do is take the bar layers and pre-compose them. Command-Shift-C or Control-Shift-C on Windows is the keyboard shortcut for that. And I'm basically just going to call this one animated bars. Move all attributes. I don't need to see any of the other properties. Okay. So now I end up with one animated bars layer, and I'm going to use it as a track mat for the gradient. If you don't see the track mat controls to the right of your layer names, it's toggle switches and modes, different switches to modes, or the keyboard shortcut is F4. Goes back and forth. The gradient is below the bars, and the bars have been consolidated into a single layer. That's what the pre-compose command was for. The track mat has one major rule. It's only the layer right above. It'll work as a track mat. So this is an alpha mat, and that's the result. I can now jump back, play that however I like, and we now have an animated colored equalizer. Whenever I need to, I can go back into that composition and change any of the settings that I need to, no problem at all. Change the position of the bars, change the spacing between the bars because of repeater, change settings of repeater. So it's all fully animatable and it's all fully editable, and I haven't lost any control. I've now got a nice little colored equalizer effect. Well, thank you. This has been Jerron Smith for Noble Desktop, and I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial.